Hello everyone, I haven't managed to finish editing a build video for this week, so I thought I'd do a quick random workshop tips video instead. Clamps and clamping. Sometimes I find myself needing to clamp something up that's really small, maybe a small repair like this one. And these spring clamps are good if you have some, but sometimes you need something smaller, and that's why I keep some of these bulldog clips in the workshop. These are designed for binding papers together, but they make great clamps. They're available in different sizes and they're really cheap to buy. If you don't have any bulldog clips, something else that can work well is a short piece of PVC pipe. You can just make a relief cut and the tension in the plastic works great for applying clamping pressure. The wider you cut the piece of pipe, the more clamping tension they'll provide. And you can do this with both the small diameter PVC pipe like this one, which is 40mm, or if you wanted something bigger, you could use some of this 100mm diameter pipe. Something else that I like to keep in the workshop for clamping is elastic bands. Again, they're available in lots of different sizes, and these are great for clamping up things like small mitre jointed boxes, or even other shapes like hexagons or octagons where you want to apply even pressure all of the way around. And if you want to increase the tension, you can either add more elastic bands or double them up. For clamp storage, I'm a strong believer about the best ideas being the simplest, and over the years I've made all sorts of different clamp racks to store them, but taking them off a rack and putting them back on has always felt like a bit of a chore. The best solution I've found for storing F-clamps is actually just using a piece of 100mm diameter PVC pipe. I secure the pipe using a couple of large hose clamps which you can tighten with these screws. It's so quick and easy to take them out and put them back in. I know it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's made a big difference for me. For my quick clamps or squeeze clamps, I just drilled a hole and glued in a piece of dowel. And that works well, and again it's quick and easy to hang them. And dowels work well to store these aluminium bar clamps too. As for my sash clamps, they're just hung on the wall with some screws. Simple, but works well. But there is still one type of clamp that I think a rack works best for, and that's the parallel clamp. I made this one from some scraps of low-grade 12mm thick shuttering plywood. Sharpening cheats. I've demonstrated my process for sharpening chisels and hand plane cutting irons in previous videos on my channel, and for that I use a honing guide, a double-sided diamond plate, a double-sided whetstone, and a leather strop and some green cutting compound. And using all of those things gives me a really accurate and sharp cutting edge. But what I haven't talked about in my videos before is my process for sharpening other things like knives and blades. And that method is a bit more crude and requires less equipment. So here is a tool that you probably don't see very often in my videos, but actually one that I use quite often. This is the Clark CBG 6SB grinder with sanding belt, and I'll leave a link to it in the description box. The grinding stone is just the original one that came with the machine, and it's pretty good for rough work. But the sanding belt, if you look around on eBay, you can find suppliers that sell these belts in higher grits, like 240, 320 and even 400. I've got a 400 grit belt fitted, and this works brilliantly for getting a really nice polished cutting edge. You do need to be careful not to let the metal overheat while you're using this, so I keep a little pot of water underneath the grinder. This is just an emptied pot of hummus from Tesco, and these tubs are really useful because they come with lids. You can quench the metal in the water to keep it cool. I use this for sharpening all of my knives in the workshop, including my marking knife. This is a great folding knife by Stanley, and I'll leave a link to that in the description box below too. I know that some woodworkers are quite fussy about using their marking knives only for marking, but personally I use mine for absolutely everything, mainly because I always keep it in my pocket, and the best tool to use is the one that you've got with you. As long as you keep the blade sharp though, it still works great for marking. The blades for this knife are disposable, but I've owned the knife for around 9 months and I'm still actually using the first blade. I just keep resharpening it and it works as well as it ever did. By the way, if you have this knife and you want to buy some replacement blades for it, don't get the official ones as they're quite expensive. Instead, go onto eBay and search for Swan Morton SM01 4211. Those blades fit perfectly and work just as well, and they're really cheap. I also sharpen my utility knife blades. Again, I hardly ever buy replacements. I just keep sharpening and reusing them. I mainly use these for things like scraping glue off surfaces, They also work well for scraping wood. Sometimes a card scraper can be too big, so it's always useful to have a few of these laying around the workshop. And I sharpen other knives like this old kitchen knife, which works great for cutting foam really cleanly. And there's no reason why you couldn't sharpen hand plane cutting irons and chisels using this machine. I wouldn't personally, because I like to keep mine nicely accurate and highly polished, but that's not to say you couldn't get results with this machine. In fact, I've got some old chisels, so let me try that now. So here is an old chisel, and as you can see, it doesn't cut very well. First I'll polish the back of the chisel and get that nice and flat. Looks good. Now I'll sharpen the bevel, first on the stone and then the belt. So there's the cutting edge, and let's see if this works. Not bad. And if you wanted an even sharper cutting edge, some green polishing compound on a leather strop and a few passes, and I'll polish the back too. And now this will probably cut as well as any of my other chisels. Here's an old gouge chisel that I picked up at a car boot sale recently. This is completely blunt. I'll polish the outside cutting edge and the inside too. This green polishing compound can be bought on Amazon for about £5 I think, and you get a really big block and it just lasts forever. I've had this block for about 3 years. And if you don't have a leather strop yet, I'd highly recommend using one. They're dead easy to make, and I'll link to a video in the description box below about how I made these. And also, I've got some for sale, so if you don't want to make your own, go over to my Etsy store, which I'll also link to in the description box below, and you can buy one. And by the way, it's a good idea to use some of these safety gloves if you're not used to using the machine, otherwise you'll come away with lots of scrapes and scratches on your fingers and hands. Glue tips. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you will have seen my glue bottle, which is by far the best glue bottle I've ever used. I know that the idea of using a sauce or mustard bottle for glue is nothing new, but what you really want is a nice long spout like this one. Great for applying glue right where you want it. This one also has a screw cap to open and close the spout, which works really well for glue, and whenever it gets clogged up with dried glue, it's really easy to clean up, and then it's ready to use again. It's also got a wide opening, so getting the glue from a bigger bottle like this one into here is easy to do. And finally, it's just a nice size, small and compact. I don't see the point in spending silly money for plastic bottles like the glue bots when these bottles work so well. And not only that, but you get to eat the sauce that comes with the bottles too. I don't think you get any sauce with the glue bots. This bottle that I'm using is from a brand called Reds. Obviously not a sponsor, and they make barbecue sauces and stuff like that. You can find them in Tesco and I'm sure some other places too. For spreading glue, I use these glue spreaders for smaller areas. These are available on Amazon and you can get 10 of them for a couple of pounds, and they're reusable because you can pick off the old dried up glue and then they're clean and good to use again next time. I'll leave a link to these in the description box. For larger areas, silicone kitchen utensils work really well. You can get the spatula type or the brush type like I have here. And again, once the glue dries up, it's really easy to remove and clean, and quite satisfying too. Preventing rust. To stop tools and metal things in the workshop going rusty, I made one of these things. It's a rag wrapped up tightly in a small container, soaked with 3-in-1 oil. I got this idea from a Paul Sellers video. In Paul's video, he uses a tomato tin for his, but I wanted mine to be smaller, so I just used a plastic spray can lid. Every so often, I'll top it up with a few more drops of 3-in-1 oil, and this is great for wiping over the soles of hand planes, hand saw blades, cast iron tables, really anything that you want to protect from rust, and it applies a nice thin coating of oil, just the right amount and no need to wipe away any excess. Check out Paul's video if you want to make your own. I'll link to that in the description box. Water in the workshop. Here's one for those of us that aren't lucky enough to have a sink in their workshop. I always keep a bottle of water with a few drops of washing up liquid inside in the workshop. I drill the hole in the cap so I can just squirt some out as I need it. I also keep a spray bottle in the shop, which again is just filled with water with a few drops of washing up liquid. This is great to use for many things. The washing up liquid in water works great as a lubricant for sharpening chisels. It's also great for cleaning your hands without having to leave the workshop. And also just for wiping things clean like your workbench or other work surfaces. Shop rags. I always keep a supply of cotton cloths in my workshop for cleaning things, applying finishes and stuff like that. Old cotton t-shirts or bed sheets work really well. If you don't have anything to recycle, then charity shops are great places to find cheap cotton bed sheets, and then you can rip them up into small squares, and then you have a good stock of rags to use. When mine are dirty, I put them in a box, and when that's full, I put them through the wash, and then I can reuse them. Rags used with oil finishes, though, are hazardous as they can spontaneously combust unless stored and disposed of correctly. I'll leave a link in the description box below for more information about that. That's it for this one. I hope you found some of these tips useful. Please subscribe if you haven't already for more weekly woodworking videos, and thank you for watching.